To make this Valentine's Day heart box, first I have to glue two oak boards together. Now this board is identical to the ones I have glued, and I will use this piece of plywood to make a template to route the half-heart shape in the inside of the box. And this is the router guide bush. The problem is that it is some taller than the plywood thickness. But if I put a piece of marquetry on the plywood, problem solved. Then I center the oak board on the marquetry, and I mark the board width on the marquetry. So now I know the half heart I will draw must be between those lines. But before drawing it, I glue the marquetry on the plywood. There is no need to put glue in the center, because I will cut that part. I put the marquetry on the plywood. I put a couple of concrete blocks on the marquetry, and I wait until the glue dries. Now I have already drawn the half-heart shape, and I left 1.5 centimeters here and here. But I must have in mind that the distance from the outside of the guide bush to the edge of the router bit is 6 millimeters. So I mark some points at 6 millimeters from the drawing line. And I follow those points to make a bigger drawing. And I use a pencil to retouch it. I drill a hole so I can pass the jigsaw blade. And now I have to be patient and as precise as I can to cut the half-heart shape. Well, much better than expected. No need to sand too much. Now there is a small curvature between the vertical ring and the horizontal plate in the guide bush, so the vertical ring doesn't reach the edge of the plywood. So I will round the top corner, but not too much, just slightly, so I will use this router bit like this. Now these are the boards I glued before, and I make a mark at some centimeters from the end, so I put this corner on the mark. I align the two parallel lines with the boards, and I screw the template with two screws at 3 or 4 centimeters from the edge of the half-heart shape. I set the depth I want to route. I lock the router. I set the depth stop. And now I can release the lock. Now, first I route with the guide bush against the template, and I push down slowly so I route in several passes. But now I realize I was very optimistic trying to route so deep. While I was keeping the guide bush against the template, it was not difficult to route, but it will be very difficult to route in the inside. So first I will use a Forstner bit to eliminate as many wood as I can. A lot of work to do, and I must be careful so I don't drill too much. I must make sure the tip of the Forstner bit Don't go as deep as the router bit. All in all, a lot of effort. Next time I won't route so deep. Now I use a gauge to clean the wood, very carefully, to make sure I don't leave a mark in the edge of the box. And now I still have to route that. So I keep routing, at least while I have a base for the router. And now I still have to route that, but I don't have a base to put the router on. So I put there that strip of plywood, and if I put the router on it, now I can route in the center. If I put there the guide bush, I can move the plywood strip. But because I have to route very deep, when I put the router on the plywood, I have to use this collect extension. But the problem is that I cannot use it together with the guide bush. I could use it like this, but it burns the plywood. So I screw it to the router base. Now I have already installed the collet extension with the router bit. I push the router down until the bit slightly touches the wood and I lock it. And now I can route in the center of the box. But because I don't use the guide bush, I must make sure I don't route the sides of the box. Well, not as good as I'd like, but because it is the first time I do this, it is good enough. Then I have to take a lot of time sanding it to get a nice surface. First with gross grit sandpaper, then with medium grit sandpaper, and finally with fine grit sandpaper. Now, trying to keep that distance, I draw the outside of the box. And after cutting the board in two, I can cut the outside of the wooden box. Now this is the half heart I have just made, and my intention was to make a symmetrical one. Like this I could put one next to the other like two trays, but it took me a lot of time and effort to make this one. So I decided to forget the symmetrical one and I just will make a lid for this one. I cut half millimeter away from the line, because I will make it fit perfect in the belt sander. Now I put there some pieces of double-sided tape and I stick the lid, making sure it protrudes slightly all around the box. And now in the belt sander, making sure to keep the box perfectly vertical, I sand until the lid fits perfect and the edge all around the box is perfectly smooth. I remove the double-sided tape and I sand everything with medium grit and with fine grit sandpaper. I clean the dust and I varnish it. I put a couple of hinges and a lock. And I also put a small handle. Finally, I can fill this box with lots of chocolate. And then I would use some nice gift wrap to wrap it. But because I don't have a girlfriend, I will eat all the chocolate myself. And I will keep the box for another moment. Thanks for watching. If you think this is an interesting video, don't forget to click like and share. And if you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel.